you kind of got the ball rolling, you know, back in your tenure as PM, and now we're at a point where it's legal across the country. Edibles potentially by next month. How does that make you feel looking back at seeing conventions like this?
Makes me feel old because it represents such a dramatic change. I mean, it's been bubbling up, and I wouldn't say that when I was in government nobody ever said we should legalize marijuana. But I think the dramatic shift, and I think partly it comes from experiences like Colorado and other jurisdictions that have taken the lead. But it's I'm pleased about it, and I mean it when I say it, that it is one of the most interesting challenges for public policy, because it's not like anything else. It's really something new and different, because you have on the one hand all the possible medical and scientific research opportunities, things like, for example, if it would improve cognitive functioning in older people. But the other challenges of how do you measure the strength of THC in products, and how do you protect people. These are all kind of new and exciting areas that really animate the need to think clearly about regulation. And then, as I say, 25 years ago, we had a pretty simplistic view of things. No, go to jail, do not pass go. I am pleased that there is an effort by many jurisdictions to create pardons for people who have marijuana convictions in their record. Too late for many people, I suppose, but it's at least a gesture that. I don't think that it was wrong to do it in the sense that you had the law there at the time, but that the law was not as enlightened as it could have been. And I was just also saying that when we think of the public policy approach to cannabis as opposed to other drugs, and people have talked about, we should legalize all drugs, but I think cannabis is unique. I mean, you cannot kill yourself with a cannabis overdose. So although we need public protection, and we certainly need protection for, against impairment for driving or people operating machinery, I mean, things like that where it could be affected, the greater peril that comes from some drugs that they really can kill people means that cannabis is in a class by itself in terms of its challenges.
Have you used cannabis for yourself or anything that?
No, but now that I'm hearing that it might possibly improve my mental functioning as I'm older, I'm finding it more appealing. And also, I don't smoke.
Right.
So now that there are other ways of using THC or CBD by drink or
right.
And I didn't get a body like this by saying no to brownies, so I enjoyed those.
It's Lester from Cannabis Wiki. We're coming up to the first year anniversary with the legalization of cannabis. What would you give Canada's government as a grading?
Well, it's hard. You can't really grade on a curve here because there aren't any other students in the class. But I would certainly give them, I guess because just to be mean, you couldn't give them an A, maybe give them an A-. I think the preparation that they entered into to think through the process of legalization, there's no easy way to do it. I mean, you've got to sort of do it.
Right.
And much of what you'll learn about how it works, you can only learn once you've done it.
Right.
Because you need the experience. You need to see how people are managing. And happily, there have been a few other jurisdictions whose experience has been helpful to us. But I think also the two phases of it, in order to allow more time to think about how we can regulate edibles and make sure that they are a positive part of the consumption pattern and not dangerous. I think that makes sense. So I would say that, not that I have a lot of places to compare it to, but I think it was sort of a typically Canadian approach, that it was, a little bit, outside the envelope, but cautious.
Right.
And I hope that it will turn out to be a useful template that other countries might find helpful in planning their own approach to legalizing cannabis,
right,
and making lots of big markets for our companies.
So with the diversity between the ages with cannabis, we know that the elderly are very strong with the stigma, whereas the young are open for the push. How do you feel this is going to affect the business?
Well, I think if the elderly can be persuaded that there are ways that cannabis can be helpful to them. You know, a lot of the medical applications are not really supported by research, and there's a lot of questioning about this. But I've spoken to a number of very good scientists, and they say that, for example, one of the ways in which medical cannabis may be having good effects is that it helps with sleep. That there are many things, both at the way analgesics work, the way people deal with PTSD, that if you can't sleep, everything else is made worse. And good sleep helps to make everything else fall in place and you can deal with other difficulties. Well, you know, our elderly population, there are a lot of these conditions, and we're not sure whether cannabis is the miracle drug or not,
Right.
but that there seem to be suggestions that it's helpful for conditions that affect older people. And in fact, the Health Canada survey that I saw a couple of months ago suggested that much of the increase in consumption was among older people. So I think in terms of how older people think about cannabis, if they can see it as helpful to themselves, then they have a different view of it. And that's where the industry comes in. And that's why having diversity in your decision making and having access to different markets and understanding the different possibilities based on age. I think we could be a country of, toking geezers. Or whatever. or brownie eating geezers.
Wow.
Brownie eating geezers. Would you like a little dessert, dear?
I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is around policy. On the panel, you talked a lot about policy. Is there a regulation that you would like to see changed? And if so, which one?
I don't think there's a regulation I want to see changed. I would very much like to see